All right, this video is for anybody who is thinking about going to law school. If you've decided that you want to go to law school in the early part of the year, like January or February, you should know a few things. Law school admissions is based on a rolling admissions cycle, and that rolling admissions cycle starts in August and September. So, if you are planning on applying to law school, but you thought you wanted to go in this admission cycle, which means that you would be applying in the spring to start law school in the fall, that means that you'd be applying smack in the middle of the application cycle. Many people already started applying to law school starting in September all the way through December. So most of the people that are getting admitted to law schools have the best chances early on in the admission cycle, which means you may have to wait until the next admission cycle. You may want to start preparing everything now, and you can still apply in this cycle, but know that you might not get the most competitive admissions offers. So if you think that you want to be able to get a lot of scholarships, or that you would want to try to apply to some of these schools that are considered reach schools, where your LSAT scores and your GPAs are a little lower than the medians for those schools, then you would want to also apply in another cycle to have the best chances of getting admitted and have the best chances of getting scholarship offers. The reason that I'm filming this video is when I started thinking about going to law school, I was exactly in that boat. I started thinking about going to law school in January, thinking that should be plenty of time to get into school by August. But I didn't know anything about the law school admissions process. And I didn't realize that many people know that they need to apply in 2, sometimes maybe 3 cycles to get into their dream schools with good scholarships. There are so many things that I wish that I knew at the beginning of that cycle, because I'm a first-generation Asian American, and my parents are not lawyers, so I didn't have anyone to really tell me what this process was like. So I wanted to film this video to give anybody who's in sort of the same boat an idea of what to expect. So, if your admission cycle starts in August or September, you should really shoot to take the LSAT in the summer months before your admission cycle starts, so that you can get a score back before you have to start submitting your applications. Now, the LSAT itself, you want to take at least 3 or 4 months to study in earnest for the LSAT. So that means you have to start preparing in the spring in order to take it in the summer and then be able to apply in the fall. So this is a long process. The law school admissions process is not short. And people think, oh, I just need a couple months to get everything together, but you really don't. You need a long time, because not only are you studying for the LSAT, you need to get together all of the pieces of the application. So for every law school admissions application, you will likely have to submit a number of things, including a personal statement, which is an essay about yourself and possibly why you want to go to law school or any other prompt that the law school gives you. Several other optional essays like a diversity statement, or maybe a GPA addendum if your GPA is not up to par, or an LSAT score addendum if you're just not a good test taker and you think that your LSAT score is not going to be indicative of your actual performance in law school. So you may need to prepare a number of optional essays. Then you will also need to prepare a character and fitness certification. So that might involve you digging up any disciplinary actions you've had in your past, or any information about citations or criminal charges or things like that. So you might need some time to get all of that information together. Then you'll need letters of recommendation. Let me talk to you about letters of recommendation, because I get asked for these a lot. You should ask people you know closely who have supervised your work in some manner for a letter of recommendation. So you should ask a professor who has actually graded your work. You should ask maybe a boss who has supervised your work, especially maybe if it's legal work. But you should have, at minimum, 2 academic letters of recommendation. So those should be from a professor. I always ask my mentees if they've already gotten their 2 academic letters of rec, because if they have not yet, then I do not feel comfortable submitting a letter of rec on their behalf until they have at least 2 of those recommendations. Then you can submit a professional recommendation, maybe from a mentor or maybe a boss or somebody else who knows you very, very well. Do not request letters of recommendation from just your random state legislator or a judge that your parents maybe knows loosely, or somebody that you just think is important, because they do not know you well enough to recommend you for law school. The point of those recommendations is to tell the reader that this person has worked with you closely and they believe that you're prepared for the rigors of a legal education. And if they've never worked with you closely, how in the world are they supposed to say anything that's going to help you get into law school? So please, please make sure that you get 2 academic letters of recommendation and then possibly a professional letter of recommendation. And in those letters of recommendation, when you go to ask your recommenders for it, make sure you give them plenty of time. So if you're applying in this current admission cycle and it is here January and you have not gotten your letters of rec yet, you're probably in a time crunch and your recommenders are not going to like that. So try to give your recommenders plenty of notice, maybe 2 months or a month at least, that they need to write you a letter of recommendation. And you want to provide them with enough information that they can write that letter. So if you took their class several years ago, you may want to remind them of how you performed in that class. And what did you do while you were in that class? Did you actively participate? Did you lead the class? Were you a TA? What did you do that they would get to know you well enough to remind them about what your qualities are? Then maybe provide them with your personal statement and your resume and basically any other ammunition that they might need to be able to talk about your interest in law school and your fitness for law school. So provide all that information to them in whatever email or DM or whatever you're using to request your letter of recommendation from them. Make sure that you send a follow-up with all of these materials so that they have everything that they need to write you an excellent letter of recommendation. And make sure you give them plenty of time to do it. So, all that being said, you have no business applying to law school if you don't really know what an attorney does. I know that sounds really harsh, but you're about to go to law school, which is a trade school. It is to teach you to practice law, not just to teach you how to think in the abstract, although many people go for that reason. It is to teach you to earn a living practicing law. So if you don't actually know what practicing law looks like, then you should be taking the time to do some career exploration. So maybe you should be putting this off for a year until the next application cycle so that you can go get some sort of experience where you're learning from an attorney. Now, I'm not saying you have to go necessarily work for an attorney as a paralegal or a legal assistant, although that's also a way to get experience. You could also reach out to attorneys that you know in your own network or through LinkedIn or any number of avenues. You might reach out to alumni of your university who are attorneys and just try to talk to a lot of attorneys, get to know what their life is like, get to know what their career path was like, and do a lot of exploration to figure out what types of attorneys are out there. I wish I knew that there were hundreds of different types of law, and there's so many different specialty areas, and the life of a criminal lawyer looks very different than the life of an intellectual property lawyer. If you're working in a law firm, your life looks very different than if you're working in-house at a corporation. So, or if you're maybe at a startup, your life might look very different than at an in-house corporation. So you really need to get a sense of what are different types of legal roles. Could you actually see yourself doing any of those jobs? And if you have not taken the time to do that, please, please, please do not throw yourself into law school. Once you turn on that fire hose, it is on. There is no putting it all back. There's no putting back Pandora's box. You have started. So make sure that you're good and ready for when you start law school, because I equate law school to drinking from a fire hose. So you're trying to drink and it's blowing so much water at you that you can't keep up. So you're not going to have time when you're in law school to do career exploration for the most part. You're not going to have a lot of time to sit and think about, what do I want to be when I grow up? What types of areas of law do I want to practice? In fact, you get into law school in August and you may have to start applying for internships in December. And during August and December, your brain is just trying to learn how to law school. It is not focused on trying to figure out what kind of job you want in the future. So trust me when I say that you should be doing more career exploration before you get into law school so that you can figure out what type of lawyer you really want to be. Once you do that career exploration, that may really change the trajectory of what types of law schools you even apply to. If you decide you want to be an intellectual property lawyer, you may want to go to a completely different law school than if you want to be a criminal defense lawyer or a civil rights attorney. So you really need to take time, talk to a lot of attorneys in the roles that you think you want, in the practice areas that you think that you're interested in, and see, where did they go to school? What types of law schools are good for that practice area? If you're shooting for some practice area that's very, very large, like corporate law or criminal law, there's probably dozens of law schools that could provide you a really sound legal education to go be successful in practicing those areas. If you're choosing a very niche practice area or an emerging practice area, like intellectual property law or cannabis law or sports law, you may choose a law school based on that practice area that has many more programs specialized in that practice area. So you're not going to have any sense of what practice areas are really broad, like corporate, or what practice areas are really niche, like intellectual property law, unless you speak to practitioners in those practice areas. There is no substitute for talking to real lawyers. There is no amount of internet research that you can do, no amount of just trolling all the Reddit threads on law school admissions, no amount of talking to a pre-law advisor that will help you in that career exploration unless you talk to lots of practitioners in the areas that you're interested in. So my advice to you is, if you're thinking about going to law school and you've just decided to do that right now, here in January, and you want to go to law school in the fall, I would highly suggest that you consider waiting and applying in the following admissions cycle. That's also because right now, most law students are getting an online law school experience. People are having very different experiences with online law school. Most of them are not good. And I can say this because I have talked to a lot of students who have explained to me the difficulties that they're having in going to law school right now. They are not able to bond with their classmates as easy. Yes, there might be a group me or something where they're able to talk to each other, but they're not seeing each other in class every day. They're not able to build the bonds as easily as they once were. And a huge part of your law school experience is building bonds with other law students. These people will move up with you in your career, and they may be sources of referrals or future business for you. And it's really important that you establish relationships with your colleagues and classmates. And it's very hard to do that in the Zoom School of Law. And for the foreseeable future, because of COVID-19, so far, it's looking like law school in the next year will probably be a lot of online class. So again, another reason why you might want to consider putting it off. And yes, there are going to be plenty of people who have completely conflicting advice. Go ahead, start law school right now. It'll be fine. You'll get a job. No. Just think about it, because there are so many things that make law school hard already. It's already hard for law students to find jobs. And then throw COVID-19 on top of it, trying to find jobs in an online virtual world. It's very, very complicated. And unless you already come into it with connections where you know that you're going to have guaranteed employment after you graduate, it's all just a big question mark. So you need to make sure that you're really prepared to start law school when you start. that you understand which practice areas that you're even interested in when you start, and that you are the type of person that can build bonds, that can take full advantage of the opportunities of law school, even in an online environment, if you plan to go in this fall or the following year. And all of those things are just really, really tough to do. So really, really think about your decision. I'm not saying that it's a bad decision. I loved law school. I love the practice of law. I think it can be very rewarding. I just think you need to really think about the decision to go to law school before you pull the trigger. So that's my advice.